what you want, when you want it, where you want it. This is The Mesh.
Brothers in Tech is a weekly podcast focused on personal and home technology, helping provide you, our fellow brothers and sisters in tech, with some information, assistance, and recommendations. Don't you think it's time we had an episode about the truly important people in our lives, our pets? Well, we agree. And in this episode of Brothers in Tech, we discuss some ways that technology can enhance your pet's life while possibly providing you with some peace of mind at the same time. Whether it be for safety, feeding, training, or play, we introduce and provide our thoughts on the latest pet tech. Hello, everyone, and welcome to Brothers in Tech here on the Mesh.tv podcast network. My name is Alan Jackson, and with me on the right-hand side of the screen over there is Brian Jackson. Brian, how you doing?
Good, Alan. How are you?
Doing pretty good. Pretty good.
Yeah.
So happy to be good together. This whole video thing seems to be working out okay. We're having a good time with that. So
I think so. How's my video look? I mean, relatively speaking. The content,
it's
kind of crappy, right?
Content's not great, but the quality's fine. It looks good. Yeah. Not too bad.
Well, I had a comment that I had been looking into different parts of the screen. So I'm actually trying something new. I've got my webcam on a tripod that's right in the center of my screen. I actually have your video right behind it. So really all I see above my webcam is your eyes. So I'm trying to get to where I'm looking at your eyes, but I'm looking as close to the camera as I can. So
see, this is a perfect example, Brian, of we do take listener feedback. And
absolutely.
We do get questions. We're commenting about the fact that last episode we put out was all about maximizing your audio and video for video conferencing or Zooms or whatever it may be. And we got some great discussions with people online about some ideas and different tactics. So Brian is rolling out one of those tactics now as we speak. So not too bad. That's good.
Yep.
Well,
so
Brian,
one of the things, it is not. But let me divert you just a second. I mean, one of the things that I noticed, and it was good that it was called out, that when you have a external webcam, which I do, and I have that because my laptop is on my left and an external monitor is in front of me. So of course, the bigger the monitor means that the webcam is going to be on top of that monitor, which means that anything that I'm looking at on the screen is going to be further and further away from the webcam, right? Especially if I'm going down to my dock like this. But we've had a couple of good examples. I think there's even an example someone shared of a webcam that you can hang from the top of your screen that sits in the middle of your screen. And so I'm kind of doing a version of that and putting the webcam in the center of my screen. Now, of course, it covers up part of my screen. So if I was doing meetings to where I was actually typing or trying to deal with documents, this may not be the best solution. But yeah, this is good. So it's certainly for a podcast, looking in the middle of the screen and looking directly at the camera might be a good move. So there we go. Yeah. Right. I mean, as bad as my image is going to look, naturally, at least this is the better version of that. Right. So There we go.
No, I think that's good. Good use of some feedback and following up on our previous episode. But Brian, that's not what we're talking about today.
It's not.
I know we could probably go on and do a follow up on last week's subject, but we've got a different one we want to talk about today. And this is Brothers in Tech, in case, we just kind of jumped right into our conversation tech talk and didn't really set up what we're doing here. I'm Alan Jackson. That's Brian Jackson. We are brothers, but we're both really into technology, and we like to talk a lot about home and family and personal technology. We kind of started this program because we found ourselves being the go-to IT people kind of in our families. And, even a network of friends and all that too. People just kind of would have problems with their cell phones, with their home TVs, whatever it may be. We'd be the ones to get the call. We know there's a lot of you out there like that in that same boat. So we want to be a resource to everybody. Or maybe if you're somebody who's been the one making the calls to somebody else all this time, and you're like, maybe it's time I become a little more self-sufficient and learn some of this on my own. Hopefully we can be a resource to help out with that. So that's hence the name Brothers in Tech. That's why we're here. And today, Brian, we got a new topic to talk about. We are going to talk about pets and technology.
Pet tech.
Pet tech. Yeah, talking about your dogs, your cats, it's pretty much the main ones we're going to get into. I don't really think we have
Are there any
tech.
others we need to worry about?
I don't think we have any tech to worry about with birds or fish. Let's focus on dogs and cats primarily today.
No.
But seeing as how that's a majority of what pets people own, I think we're going to cover a bigger audience that way. We are going to talk about ways to incorporate some new technology into the care and raising and management of your pet. So we got some interesting topics. Again, technology has always played some little bit of role in how people take care of their pets, but I think especially the last several years, we've seen some real growth in some areas, and with smart home technology, there's some ways to tap into some different things with pets that we couldn't do before. So Brian, what's kind of sum up for us? What are we going to talk about with pets? What are kind of the categories we're going to be getting into here?
Yeah, so I think we tried to think about what are the major areas of concern or areas of work that you have to do in owning a pet, right? So we thought kind of first and foremost, keeping that pet safe or keeping them close by, understanding where they are, right? So we'll talk about safety. We're going to talk about probably, which is an important thing to do anytime you have a pet, talk about feeding them. So feeding the pet, right? It's kind of an important piece, right?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And then we've got some other things that I think are maybe a little less important, but can be really, really useful as well, such as training your pet, dealing with the business, as we're going to call it.
Dealing with the seedier side of pet management.
That's right. Getting down and dirty with the business. So that's going to be its own category. And then I think kind of more of fun, dealing with play, right? Ways in which you can engage in play with your pet. So safety, feeding, training, the business, and play are going to be our areas of coverage today, right? I think that covers the majority of what we need to worry about.
It should. But we're also at the end of the episode, we'll give you a few websites of some places we recommend. If you're really interested in digging deeper into some more technology uses for your pet, there's some great online resources and sites that specialize in selling a lot of products that tap into the technology world to help with how you handle your pets. So let's kind of talk. Let's get into first, Brian. Let's talk kind of I feel like one of the most important things. I mean, because here's the thing: feeding and training and all that. There are ways to do all of that now naturally, without technology. We're going to talk about some ways to improve that. But safety, to me, is probably where technology can really play a role that would have been really difficult to do beforehand. How do we keep track of our pets using technology? I know the microchips were always a thing that, you could go to your veterinarian and many of them would provide the service where they could microchip your pet. Well, it was a little bit of a costly process. And it's just the fact that it is something that's, embedded in your pet. It doesn't give you a lot of flexibility. It's pretty much, there it is. And you have one way of communicating with it. But
and I don't think Alan was the microchip. Microchip was if a dog was or a pet was found, right?
Right. It's not going to
they could scan it and figure out. Yeah. You couldn't track it, right? You couldn't go and say, "Where's my dog?"
Well, the idea is if somebody
I'm assuming they have some
dog,
GPS versions. Yeah.
If somebody could find the dog, they could turn it in, and there are places where they could scan it and get some information. They did roll out some that could also be GPS trackable, but again, it's the idea of actually putting something inside your pet that's pretty much locked in, it's there. You don't have a lot of flexibility what you can do with it once it's there.
Right.
I never really got into that idea. Of course, most of my pets are ones that stay inside, so I didn't see the need to get them tracked. But I can understand for somebody who has an outdoor pet, especially one that could roam a little bit, the tracking is really important. For an indoor dog or cat, if you have one and you're worried about them leaving, like, we just moved to a house where we have a very busy front road in front of us. So even our indoor dog and cat, if they ran out the front door when they're not supposed to, that could be a problem. So we kind of need to know if they're in the house or not. And really a microchip wasn't going to help us with something like that. So what's some great options there, Brian?
Well, I want to take that example you just made, because that's a really good one for us to think about. So for the pet owner who has an animal that if they were to leave your house or leave your yard, right, that's concerning to you, and that's something that you want to know about or something that you want to keep from happening. So I think that's a really good approach, because all the things we're going to talk about here have to do with that scenario, right? So one is, do you just want to be able to track your dog or your cat, right? Do you want to know, like if you wanted to pull up on your mobile device, say, where are they right now? That means that there needs to be some sort of sensor that is on them, probably on a collar, probably something that they're carrying around with them all the time that has some sort of GPS connection. That there are ways of doing that, right? There are location trackers. There are ways that, just like you can start to track everything else in your possession these days, this would be something that could go on there. I'm assuming most of the options, and there's a bunch of these out there, but most of them are going to be collar based, right? You attach to the collar, and it's a device that has power to be able to have a GPS signal. So at any point in time, you can't find Fido in your house, that you could pull up and say, where is he? And be able to see, oh, he got out and he's, at the neighbor's house, or he's down the street. That seems to be cutting down on some of the problems that, we have seen as pet owners in the past, right?
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. But one thing that I think, when the role of a smart technology starts to really roll in, is, imagine your dog does take off running, but you don't know they're gone for a certain amount of time until you just happen to realize that they're gone and they've already slipped out the door. They could be half a mile down the road already, and you don't know. So when you start getting into this idea of incorporating things like GPS trackers or other type of trackers with a smart home type of setup, they do make the devices now where you could basically say, I want to tie it in with, I want to get notified if this thing leaves a certain boundary or leaves this home or goes a certain number of feet away from me. And when you get down to GPS technology, you're pretty precise with that. So they can really say, all right, if it gets outside of this boundary that I kind of define as my house and maybe my yard, notify me. Yep. Like send me a notification on my phone right away. So that way I haven't lost precious time trying to find out where they went. Yeah. So that's where it gets kind of exciting to think about, is that, it's a little more preventative. I mean, yes, they've still ran away, but by catching it quickly and getting notified, it's a much more preventative way to go and try to resolve it than having to kind of backtrack and figure out where they are. Even if you could track them on a GPS, you're still behind them now, and you're having to kind of catch up and get to them. So,
yeah. So if you think about it, Alan, it's, all the notification possibilities we have now that have already started to come about, things like, notify me or turn on my security system when I leave the house, right? The fact that it knows that your phone has left the house. Well, basically what you're doing is, with most of these devices, you're going to have to give the pet some device that's then going to trigger one of these notifications, right? And the notifications can be things like, the moment it goes out the pet door, which we'll talk about in a minute, tell me. Or the moment it leaves my yard, well, that means you need to have sensors in your yard. Tell me, right? Or the moment it leaves my Wi-Fi network, which for Wi-Fi, may reach, 150 feet, right, from your house, notify me. So I think the cool part is the way that technology has been set up these days. One, that it's gotten smaller, so that chip or that sensor can be put on a collar pretty easily. And then there can be sensors set up either with the yard or with the door or with, location based, that says, when that sensor leaves that area, give me a notification. And just as, any other device that we have with security can notify you fairly quickly, those things are available now. And I think they're great. I think those are great uses of technology, especially if you have as you said, you have a runner, right? You have somebody that if they were to get out, they potentially are going to, get in trouble. They're going to get to the road, or they're going to run to your old house if you just moved, right? Those are things you need to obviously be able to use technology for.
Well, what I love, Brian, is that the idea that once you've got something on your dog, let's say on the collar or on a cat, you can start. It's just like it's like a watch. It's like wearing a watch on your human wrist here. and that it can do a lot more. So there are devices out there that are, yes, they're tracking. That's their main goal, is to keep you tracked of where your animal is. But since this device is on, on the collar of your pet, it's there all the time. It's able to track and monitor a lot of other things. We've actually seen a lot of these trackers starting to say, look, we're going to go beyond just the idea of just location. That's important, but we also want to help you get some information about the health of your animal, help you track how healthy or how some things you need to be mindful of with your animal. So I love this, and I'm going to bring up an example here of one that's a pretty high regarded one, but I think it shows a great example of what you can do now with these types of devices. And this is an example. This is the Whistle Go. Is a Whistle makes a kind of a array of products to help with animal monitoring and smart devices there. This one is a health and GPS. So again, it's this idea of taking the fact that you're going to have a little box or a little device on the collar of your animal, and it allows you to track the GPS as well. But it also does things like health monitoring to get proactive alerts when they catch potential issues. You can see, fitness features. So it is tracking fitness of your animal. If you can put in the dog's breed, weight, and age, you can see, is it getting the kind of exercise it's needing based on the number of steps.
And taking enough steps and moving enough.
Moving around as well, which I think is just great. I think that's all of a sudden, if you're gonna spend some time to get your animal to where you can track them, why not use that same technology to try to learn more about what we can do? Again, I use the Apple Watch with my family members. Sometimes we just want to know where each other are, and it's great for location, but the fact that the watch is also getting us fitness information, it's the same idea with these kind of trackers now available for animals as well.
No, I'm
curious about that. Yeah, I'm curious about the health monitoring. I'm just, what are some things that I'm looking to see here? So it says the algorithms analyze your pet's looking, scratching, drinking, and sleeping week over week. Which just really think about it. If your dog is not sleeping really well, and it can track that and let you know that, hey, your dog's sleeping rhythms are really bad or there's some possible issues, it's going to notify you about that. Just like your watch would if you had some sort of a heartbeat issue or anything else going on. So I think that's really great. I think it's really cool.
I love it.
Now, we'll say these kind of products are kind of pricey. They're $150, and I think you got to have a subscription to monitor throughout the year for a service like this.
Kind of like a security service would be. Yep.
But it's pretty cool though. Pretty cool.
It is very cool. Very cool. So Alan, one other little minor issue that I would mention is just the size of it. It's something to keep in mind, right? If you're someone like me who has always had small dogs, right? Even a device that size is pretty big when you're talking about a 10 or 12 pound dog, right? If you have a bigger dog, which of course, again, the bigger dogs are going to be the ones that maybe you're more concerned about darting and running, out into traffic maybe or something. But the little dogs, which generally are the ones that are staying inside, I think there's even more of a concern that when they get out, it's more of an emergency, right? So, so that's one thing I would say. It would be nice if they had a smaller version of this. Maybe it was less, had fewer features or something, but if they had a slightly smaller version for really small animals, that could simply just give you the tracking and maybe some of the other small pieces, that would be kind of cool too. But I love this. I mean, as a big dog fan myself, I mean, having a dog right now that's going through kind of some health issues, it would be nice to have some other things like, hey, by the way, he's only walked this much today, right? If you've got two people taking care of them, you don't know who's taking them out and how long they've gone. That would be a really cool thing to know. So that's pretty cool. Great.
Yeah. I mean, again, if you're going to put a device on there that's going to be permanently sitting with your animal, might as well use it to grab some other information that'd be helpful as well.
Yeah.
Now, I have gotten questions, Brian, I don't know if you have, about the whole idea of tracking. Trackable items have gotten to be really popular in the last few years. And, I know you actually, me for a birthday or a Christmas gift, I guess, one of the tile trackers that I use on my keychain. And then Apple came out with their AirTags recently, or in the last year, little miniature trackers you can put on things. I get questions a lot from people saying, well, couldn't I use that with
on it?
I mean, they're like $20, $25. and I could put it on. They have some ways to affix to a nice little kind of connector chain thing that could go onto a leash. It'd be a great way to track them. So there are some pros and cons with that. I mean, yes.
Yeah, let's think about that.
You can do this. Okay. I want to go ahead and say first off, I'm not, there are some downsides to it, but at the bare minimum, yes, this is possible that you can attach an air tag or a tile to an animal. And just like if you attached it to your briefcase or keys or anything else, you can pull it up on the Find My app on the iPhone and be able to see where it is. The thing to keep in mind about the air tags or even the tile, the little tile, similar type of device you've got here as well.
Tracker.
The difference between all of this is that you are looking at a device that uses Bluetooth connectivity to ping other, like in the case of Apple, other Apple devices in the vicinity. So what that means is that, well, an AirTag, it may work really well to try to find an item because that item is probably going to be possibly near other people, and the chance of somebody around there having an Apple product is pretty high. That's how it works. You imagine a dog, though, that takes off and runs out in the woods. Probably not going to find a lot of Bluetooth connected things around them. So that's why GPS is important for truly good tracking of a lost animal, because GPS will get right down to the longitude, latitude, very specific, doesn't need any other devices around it. It's using actual GPS signals available to it everywhere. But, like I showed you, it's $150 for that one tracker that we showed a little bit ago, compared to $25 for one of these other devices, like a tile, for example, type of shareable device. So, let's say you just don't want to put a lot of money into tracking an animal, but you'd like to do a little bit. This is better than nothing, by all means. These will work, but just keep in mind, if you're looking for truly great accuracy and being able to really follow them no matter where they are and if they're around people or not, you may want to look at a GPS device like the previous one we showed, the whistle.
Yeah. Well, and this is the thing. I know we've talked a little bit about the trackers before, but there are pros and cons. For someone who has tile trackers as well, the downside is this is not something where you would expect to know down to the square foot where that particular device is. If it's in your house, it's great to have because you can turn on the ringer and it'll beep at you so that you can go find it. But you're not going to find it simply from looking at the tracker app and say, it's just going to show you, it's in your house or it's in this general area, right? Now, if I lived in a big city, so if I lived in downtown New York City and I had a pet, a tile may work just fine, right? Yeah. Because,
where's it going to go?
Someone takes your dog, right? There's plenty of people around you that probably have tile apps on their phones. So all of a sudden it's triangulating with all of that. And you would know, I see that it's, a couple blocks away. You might have an opportunity to do that. If you live out in the country, or you live to where your dog's going to go out of your fence line and you want to know that that's happening, these are not the ways to go. This is not what this is going to be for.
That's the other thing that you're right mentioning, is that these air tags or tiles are not meant for notifying you the very second that they leave an area. They will notify you. There are some ways to have it tracked and say, hey, look, if you get away from this device for a certain amount of time, I will send you a notification, let you know. But it's not going to be down to that nth degree that you need. Like if your dog is bolting out the front door, out your front yard, you kind of want to know right away and not several minutes later, which is what those tracking devices are going to do. So, it's not the best tracking solution, but in a pinch and for limited amount of money put into it is pretty good. And like you said, living in a bigger city, it does make a little better sense than it does living out in a more rural area. So,
just think about it this: if you've got a lot of people around you and if all you want to do is know that when you can't find your dog, that you can try to get an idea generally where it's been seen recently, then sure. And, maybe you've bought tile packs where you get a 5-pack and you've already got one and you decide to put it on their collar. great, right? I mean, it can certainly give you a little bit more security, but you're right. If you're someone like me who would rather know, if I'm going to track them, I'd rather know the moment they left the door. I have an indoor dog. If he happens to get out, I want to know that right away. Then this is not going to be the way. I'm going to be looking for something that a more creative situation, either the whistle or a type product like that, or Alan, if we're okay to move along to another direction, maybe I'm looking for something that says, maybe I don't need to track the pet. Maybe what I need to do is track the exit out of their pet door. Maybe I need to know when they leave their pet door. Maybe I need to know when they go outside. And that, I think, is kind of cool that there are things that are actually smart pet doors now. So let me give you a quick scenario, Alan. Let me give you a quick scenario. So I have a pet door. Our pet door, now luckily our pet door is a little different. We have a fenced backyard, and our pet door I put into the screen itself. So I attached one of these pet doors into the screen. So when I have the door open, the screen closed, they can go through the screen, through a door in the screen. My dog can go in and out. So obviously I'm setting that scenario up to where even if they went out, I've already said they can go out, right? Because I've opened up a screen. But if I had a pet door, like a dog door, on that sliding door or something to where they could go out on their own when I'm not home, that's where it gets to be a little nerve-wracking, right? Especially if I don't have a fence outside, or if there happens to, like me, I have a small dog and I found out there was a gap in one of our fence boards to where he potentially could slide out. Now I want to know when he's gone outside that door. So kind of a cool thing is the pet doors, there's a couple of advancements in those that I've been really intrigued about. One of them is that there are pet doors to where the pet door itself only unlocks when you get close, when the dog gets close to the pet door. Now, why is that important? All right. Why would it be important for only the dog to be able to go out the door? Well, I think I may have sent this to you, Alan. We have on our outdoor cameras, we caught several raccoons the other day coming through our yard.
Right.
Well, if I have a pet door and the raccoon is smelling things inside, I don't want the raccoon to be able to get through. So one of these electronic smart doors is kind of cool in that, the collar, there's probably a sensor on the collar that as the dog gets close proximity to the door, it unlocks, allows the dog to go out. When they're away from the door, it's locked. Nobody can get through. Nobody can push through. So to me, there's one really cool advancement that says, well, if I'm worried about my dog darting, maybe I ought to know that one, only they can go out the door. And two, there's kind of a next step of this, which is they can notify you when the dog goes out and goes through that door, or when the door gets unlocked. Those are some of the things you might look for as a way of kind of recognizing a little bit more quickly when the pet's leaving. So this particular one you've looked at, tell me a little bit about it, Alan.
The electronic smart door. This is from PetSafe, their product, and I don't have any experience with a pet door, so I'm going into this a little bit, just kind of learning it as I go. But it does sound like this has a capability where it can unlock based on if it detects your animal, your pet is approaching the door. So kind of, and I would assume too that there's got to be a function on these where you could basically say, I want to lock the door, even for my pet for a time. Let's say if I'm traveling and I'm going to be somewhere, out for a little bit, and I really don't want the dog going out that day while I'm out traveling too far away. I can lock it to where the dog, even if the dog approached it, it's not going to let him through. And then I can let him out or let the door be accessible remotely. So that kind of gives the ultimate flexibility, notifying me if they come in and out of the door, me with the ability to lock or unlock that pet door whenever I want, or to allow the dog to unlock it themselves by approaching the door.
Right. So even if I'm home and I've decided that this is the time where I want my pet to be able to go out, that I can't get that raccoon that just decides to come in the middle of the day, right? So that allows for that situation. And I think what you're talking about too, Ellen, I mean, for those who have listened to our previous episodes where we talked, I think you've mentioned a couple times now, is it Level? What's the name of the door lock that you have?
Smart lock I use? Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So the same idea, right? I mean, you could, I'm sure there's also a way to deadbolt. You could have an additional deadbolt if you decided, you know what, even if I don't want anybody coming in, even if they have the app to be able to come in.
Yeah.
I could still deadbolt. I'm sure a lot of these smart doors, these dog doors, I mean, even ours that isn't a smart door, has a little slider where we can lock it so that the dog can't go out during certain times. So
yeah.
So I think those would be things to look for, right? Is to figure out what is your use case.
Yeah. And I'm not necessarily advocating this one. I have not used any of these smart doors.
Right.
But I do know the technology's there, and I think there's some great options to work with.
Yep.
Not necessarily advocating the pet safe one because we don't have any experience with it, but just they do make some brands of those that you can actually put into your own existing door, just like a more traditional pet door, but ones you can control remotely. I mean, think of a great example. Let's say you're away from your house, but your security camera outside picks up that there are some other dogs, like maybe some more loose dogs that are out there, kind of aggressive dogs. And you just decide at that moment, you don't want your dog to leave that house to walk outside for any reason. So you can trigger it remotely and say, nope, go ahead. Let's lock down that pet door. So I don't want my dog to leave the house for any reason for a little while.
Yeah.
So some great reasons to kind of have that flexibility, but how great is it to know that you could be away from your house and be notified that, yep, the dog did leave the pet door and then the dog came back in, and kind of being aware of that. So so that's good.
And I think that's in our goal, I think with this discussion is give you the key features that you ought to look for, right?
Yeah.
If you're someone, if I was getting a pet door and an electric one like this, I would be looking for the ability to have Wi-Fi connection so I could get notifications, the ability for the dog to be able to open it only when they're close, as opposed to someone else being able to go through. So if you are able to get those notifications and you're able to do that, the beauty is you can look back at one of our earlier episodes a long time ago, Alan, where we talked about some of the automations that you could create. I mean, there's all sorts of things you could do. The example you just mentioned says, if anything moves on my outdoor camera, then make this happen with my smart door, right? You could start to really create lots of cool things, which I think is, for a pet owner who can't be at home all the time, those are the kind of the things that you want to make a better experience for the pet. So,
it is some nice,
so that would be another one, right?
Sure.
A smart door. I mean, obviously, Alan, one of the things that technology's been around for a long time with pets is the security of, I don't want them to leave my yard. And how do I get that to happen? And there's all sorts of like invisible fences. Okay, those have been around for ages, right? Invisible fences, people used to bury lines all the way around their perimeter that says, okay, the dog has a collar that if they get close or go through that beam, it shocks them so that they learn. There's a training element, but also a safety element to make sure the dog isn't leaving your perimeter. I haven't had one of those before. I've had friends that have had those, and those, like I said, they've been around forever. What I will say is, just looking into that, it seems like they've improved a little bit into where it used to be you had to bury lines, right? You had to go and dig up your yard, bury a line, and then that would be the way in which it would recognize. Now I think there's wireless versions. You could go and put multiple flags up, and the flags end up creating a perimeter that will end up kind of notifying the dog. You can do it, with a small shock or a vibration or even a noise that kind of trains them, but also keeps them in your yard. So I think that those are the other things. If you're someone who wants your dog to be outside, but also doesn't want them to leave your perimeter, technology is also there for that, right?
Yeah, we actually looked into that for my dog when we moved in this house, because we wanted to be able to let her to go outside some, but we really needed to make sure she stayed pretty close to the house, in the yard, so she didn't get close to the busy streets. But we didn't want to dig an invisible fence line through the house, or through the yard. So they do make them, like you said, it's like a one unit that you kind of set in the central spot of where you'd want the perimeter to be around your house. So it could be inside your house, or at least like in a carport or a covered shelter or something outside. But it does create that perimeter around your house with that same kind of radio frequency. So if the dog approaches it, it's just like the invisible fence. It will emit a noise, let them know that they're approaching the barrier. it does emit some sort of, vibration type feel when they leave. So it kind of emulates I don't want to say a shock because it's not quite that bad, but it is enough to surprise them and kind of know that they've gone too far. Yep. So it's good. And the great thing about it too is that they do make them to where they're one way or two way. So if they do run out by accident and they run back in, these are ones that you can actually have them run back in and they don't get affected again. They don't get that same emotion. So it actually,
you don't want them trained to stay out, right?
That's right. That's always been the problem with the invisible fence, is that once they run past that line, they're not going to want to come back. So once they're out, they're out. But they do make them now to where they can come back in. So it's a little bit better. I didn't get a chance to use it. Our dog got really sick, or shortly after we moved in, and stayed inside all day, so we didn't see the need for it. But it was one we were exploring for a while for sure as an option. It has gotten a little better, probably not advanced as much as a lot of the other things we're talking about, but there have been some improvements away from the shock collars and running wire throughout your house, your yard. So,
and I haven't looked into this, but I'm assuming also now the perimeter of a lot of people's property these days, a lot of times probably aligns with their Wi-Fi network, the Wi-Fi reach. I would imagine there's also some other do-it-yourself versions where you could say, the moment they leave the Wi-Fi, the Wi-Fi capability, this happens. Or if they start to, get to the edge of my Wi-Fi, right? The downside with that is that, if your Wi-Fi goes down, is there an issue that says, oh, you've moved off the couch and sorry, you've reached the end of our Wi-Fi. So, I just think the technology behind this is great in that we're getting things to where, the sensors are smaller. It used to be those dog collars, they had to be really, really big, this big device that went on them and replace the batteries often and all of that. Now you can you're getting a smaller version of that. You're also getting maybe a more humane version of that. But potentially you've got the ability to do it without digging up your yard. So I think that's great. Yeah. So there's some options there.
Brian, what about if we want to keep an eye on our pets while they're inside the house? Let's say we have an indoor dog or cat and we are not at home. We go off to work or we're off for a weekend or whatever it may be. And we want to keep tabs on them inside the house. I mean, of course, we've talked about home security systems and kind of the cameras you can get for inside your house, but that's really geared for a different purpose. That's more of, I want to get a broad view of making sure nobody's coming into my house. They make a lot of products, and I don't know if you've had any experience with them or not, where you can actually have the kind of meant for pet cameras, especially dogs, like a camera that you position inside your house. It's on your Wi-Fi network. You can check on it remotely, just like you could your home security one. But the way that you can kind of keep tabs on your animal is a lot of them will include a dispenser of like a treat. So in other words, it's kind of encouraging your pet to be near that camera occasionally. And whenever you want to try to call them, you can actually, I'll bring up a screen to show an example. But my son had one of these for his dog, which was really fun to watch, where basically you could call them over a little speaker on that camera device. And when they hear your voice, ideally they come running to the unit, and you could give them a little treat that encourages them to know that it's okay to approach this thing and be near it. But the main thing is you got a camera that's really meant for looking at your animal at their level, obviously down the ground level, and kind of in a spot where you feel like that the pet is more likely to be or may hang around a lot more. But with that little audio voice that you can play on it, you can really get their attention and call them over, so you can just get a visual check to make sure they're good and see how they're doing on things.
Yeah. No, I do not have one of these. We were intrigued by them several years ago when we were having to leave our pet alone for hours and hours at a time when we go to work, and we had to kind of have an interest of checking in. Now I will say we do this often. We do check in on our pet every so often, especially our dog right now is also sick, and so we, want to make sure that he's not pacing and seeming as though he's having a bad time. We use our cameras this way. And this is probably the one reason that I have an indoor camera. I've talked before about how I have the Wise cameras and I have the outdoor versions of these, but I have one indoor one that is able to turn. I can, turn it, pan, zoom, and all of that stuff. I have one of those, and that's the reason we have that. It's not to see if someone's in our in our living room, because we know if they're coming up to our doorbell, we know if they're coming outside. But this is for us to check in on our dog. A couple times throughout the day, we'll pull up the camera, we'll zoom and try to pan around and try to see where he is and make sure he's not pacing. Sometimes we'll turn on the notifications that says if he's moving, please notify us. And we can, of course, speak through our camera and, try to console him a little bit or whatever. But the idea of giving a treat's kind of cool, to hopefully, try to, calm the dog down or to, kind of train them to do a few things. So this is kind of is a cool thing. So if you don't have your own indoor camera system, this could be a nice way of adding that simply for the pet. Yeah.
Well, or even if you do have an indoor camera system, but maybe the positioning of that cameras are really meant for watching your doors and windows or other areas. But there's a spot where your pet likes to lay, likes to hang out, likes to be when you're not there. This kind of gives you some flexibility because obviously you can move it around. It's portable. It's not something fixed anywhere. So there's some pros and cons to it compared to a home security system camera. One thing I do like about these, which it would not have worked with my dog because my dog would bark at everything, but it does also have an ability to turn on a bark sensor. So the idea is that if your dog is one that's not likely to bark unless there's truly something worrying it, upsetting it, let's say he hears somebody near the door or something else, then you can actually have a device like this say, notify me if he's barking. Then you can check in on the camera and be like, okay, what's gives because my dog doesn't bark very often. Now, again, my dog barked at everything all the time. So I would have been notified every 5 minutes about something. That wouldn't have worked for me, but I do like that feature. I think that's great if you have a very protective dog that is only going to sound the alarm if something's wrong, and you can be notified of that right away. So
that's very cool.
It's good. So a lot of great ways to kind of help keep our pet safe, or at least keep an eye on them, keep them tracked, keep them in place, whatever it may be. There's a lot of, it's the foundation of all these things have been around for a long time. It's just they've gotten using the smart home technology capabilities and getting a little more customized to these specific needs is where it's been kind of interesting. Yeah.
And notifications. I mean, I think that's, because of the smart home connection, to me, that's a game changer when you can start to be notified rather than, again, I think for, there may be a lot of people that have owned pets for a long time and maybe have outdoor pets and, they're just thinking, what are you talking about? Why would I want to, track my pet? Or no, they're supposed to be able to live on their own. But for someone who has, small dogs, an indoor dog, and then specifically, and I've had my dog almost 14 years, the later parts of their life where you're like, okay, my dog is sick and I'm a little nervous about, are they hurting? Are they, can I leave them alone? At least it gives you some peace of mind to know I could check in on them. I could know whether or not maybe they are a little delirious and they wander further away than they need to because their vision's bad. Those are the things that might be helpful. So I think they're great. I don't think they necessarily lead to some negative, behaviors. It doesn't mean that, hey, you're going to start leaving your dog more often because you can do this. It just maybe gives you the peace of mind, which I think
peace of mind is what it is. Yeah. Well, so Brian, safety was the big thing we want to talk about, but there are some other topic areas you mentioned at the top of the show. I think we should hit and talk about how technology is improving these other aspects of caring for pets. Feeding is kind of an important thing. And granted, we all feed our pets if you have a pet, but the idea of using technology to help with the feeding, especially when you're not around. I know that we've had some of those automatic feeders that you can put a lot of food into a
every 2 hours does something.
And it just knows it's like a little mechanical timer. It just knows, okay, it's been 2 hours. I'm going to spit out some more food for the animal to eat. And that's fine, but it's obviously not really catered to any one particular dog. It's, you're relying on just a certain interval that has to happen. It's not really letting you know if the food is out because, you may have set it to come out every 2 hours and you thought you had enough in there. At the end of the day, it's it's not spitting out anything because it's out of food, and we don't know that. So it's just,
Sure.
there's a lot of still things that could kind of be improved upon, and they have used technology to kind of help with feeding of things using smart feeders.
Well, and it's
You have any
like,
experience with these?
well, I'm just thinking as you say this, it's like Back to the Future, the first scene. Doc Brown has a timer that every day kind of dumps some food out for
Yeah.
Einstein. The issue there is that even if the dog doesn't eat it, it's still going to dump it out, right? It's still going to
That's
be
true.
causing a mess, right?
Mhm.
So the beauty of this is that, it could become based off of behavior as opposed to based off of simply time, right? The beauty is you could set these for, we do not have these. We've not used one before, but we've looked into them before or looked at them. And, they're pretty nice in that if you believe, you have an animal that needs a certain amount of food delivered to them every 4 hours or something. I got I have to say I got berated many years ago by a veterinarian who I had taken my dog in, and they gained weight, and he was just so frustrated to hear that my dog free fed, right, that I fed them in the morning, and I said he eats when he wants to eat. And he's like, oh my gosh, you can't free feed. Well, a way to get around that, right, is if I'm not going to be home for 8 hours, is to have something that only puts out a portion every few minutes or few hours, or only puts it out when it's gone, and it says you're only able to get a certain amount, right? I think people have been using some of this for cats for a long time because cats were a little bit more self-sufficient into where they had a litter box. You could set food out and they would just eat as they needed to eat for days upon days. Dogs, I think, were a little bit more problematic because they needed to go out. But these have been great. What I love about what's changed with these is they can actually, some of these actually have the ability of then giving you information that says, Fido finished his bowl, right? There's no more food left. So then you can decide from a notification that, hey, do I want to give Fido more food or not? Or maybe I need to know that, the fact that Fido, is eating more than he normally does, and there's a health concern, right? Yeah. So, I think that's some of the cool things about these is they can connect through your Wi-Fi. And anything that can connect through your Wi-Fi means that there are ways of controlling it and notifying you. And you can just think about all these opportunities, right?
Well, think about the idea too. Even starting back as we started talking about the more mechanical ones that we have available beforehand, it's still set on intervals. And, if I say, look, I want my dog to get some food at 7 a.m. in the morning, and then again at 5 in the afternoon, if that's my custom schedule, I want to be able to program that and say, that's the 2 times I'm going to have some food come out. And that's what I think is great, is that you're not relying on just it being a mechanical process that has to be on a certain timer. It's the fact is these are plugged into the wall. Many of them have battery backup. So if the power goes out, they're still going to run the way they should. And as far as the times you set, so you don't have to worry about that. Yeah. But also if you say you want to skip a meal, say, look, I just, I gave him some food a different way, or he got some food treat some other way. So we're not going to feed him this time. So skip. I don't want you to feed him automatically through the dish bowl this time. And so you can have that skipped and not worry about it. Unlike a mechanical one, there's really no way to do it other than to unplug it or stop it from doing what it's doing already. So I love the flexibility of it. Again, this is really more for those situations where you have an animal that you aren't able to feed throughout the day, and you need to make sure they're being taken care of, but you want to have more control over it. And also, like you said, a little bit more able to watch what they're eating and how much they're eating. Because there's the thing is that, there's some dogs that I think I've seen where that automated food disbursement on every so many hours basis, the dog will just eat all of it every time the food comes out. And it's like overeating because you're not able to control it. Here, it's easy to say with one of these smart devices, if the bowl's empty, don't feed them again, or if there's still food in the bowl, don't put any more food out there. And you have a lot more control of how you set that up. So I love this idea.
Think about another example, Alan. What if, So let's say that I went all in on the technology. I had an automated feeder system, plus maybe one of the camera systems that was there to kind of notify me when they get close to their bowl when they're eating, right? Maybe one of these automatic feeders may also have a camera enabled. The beauty of that is, let's think about a situation I think that a lot of people have. What if you had two dogs and the food comes out and you see that one dog scarfed it all away, the other dog got nothing, right? So now all of a sudden, should there be more food that comes out because, dog number two didn't get anything? Those are the things that allow the flexibility that these sorts of things will allow. Alan, I had a discussion about this with it's a friend of mine actually who mentioned when we were talking about smart lights and being able to do smart home things, about having your lights turn on at certain times. And he was trying to ask me, he's like, why would I do this? He said, I've had this for ages. I have a timer on a light that'll turn on at certain times and turn off at certain times. It's manual. I plug it in, cost him $10. And I said, absolutely, that's great. But let me give you an example. Let's say that with that smart timer, the manual timer, you turn it on to come on at 5 p.m. and turn off again at a certain time. But from one day to the next, the time changes and you're out here in the Northwest and now it's dark at 4 instead of 5. Well, guess what? Now you have to remember that. You have to go and set that up next time. Whereas if it was a smart bulb, it would be something you can go in the app and say, go by daylight savings time, that, whenever sundown happens, this occurs.
Yeah.
That's the same idea with these dog bowls, right? If you just had a manual one, that's great, but there is no flexibility. There is no changing midway. You have to remember to do it. You have to remember to set it. You have to remember to make it based on time only, right? So I think that's the beauty of what all of the smart devices have allowed is time's not the only reason why certain things need to happen. And I think that having the ability to make things happen in other scenarios is really creative. And this is exactly like that. So feeders, water, there's water fountains to do the exact same thing, or water deliver,
Yeah, which I hadn't even thought about that. But then as soon as I read about it, I'm like, well, yeah, I guess that makes sense. It's a water fountain, an automated water fountain. So you have an animal that just needs some water, but you don't want to overdo it. You don't want to have too much water just sitting there getting stale over time. It's just going to pipe out some fresh water on a schedule or whenever you on demand, but remotely. Yeah.
Yep. Flow it out. I mean, I think there, anything in which you say, would it be more beneficial and more healthy and whatnot, or would it give me more peace of mind? And again, we keep coming back to the peace of mind. So I think, feeding is another one. Now, I think this is most important for people that are not home that often. If you're someone that, is going to be gone for long periods of time and really wants to make sure that you're trying to not feed them all at once and, have them, starve throughout the day if you get stuck at work until late in the evening. I think these are really helpful ways of going about it. The part that makes me a little nervous is anytime something is automated like this, that I keep wondering, what if it goes haywire? What if something goes wrong? What if, power goes out? What if these sorts of things, all of a sudden I don't have these, things that I had planned on, but almost all of these will have fail-safe notifications, right? Things that will tell you something just went wrong, right? And
the idea, if you think about it, if a device goes offline, just like your Wi-Fi network nowadays, a lot of times, if you're away from your home Wi-Fi and the power goes out, mine notifies me that, hey, I don't get a signal anymore from your wireless network. If these devices have any kind of notifications back, at least we know, hey, power's out. So if power's out, then all these other things may not work. So we got a lot to contend with if that's happening, but at least we know, we're aware of it. So that's good. Yeah.
All right, Alan,
let's talk about training. This is mainly for dogs. I mean, if you're somebody who can train your cat, more power to you. But talking more about dogs, we've got a cat that has adopted us right now. And I would love to figure out how to train it because it is driving me crazy. It does not want to do anything a normal cat would do in our house. And it's on the point of terrorizing me at times.
Well, it's a cat, Alan. It's a cat.
Yeah.
Cats are always up to something, man. I don't trust them.
It loves my wife.
Cats at all.
It loves my wife, and I think it hates me. I really do. I can see it.
So I do trust cats a little bit better, actually. Yeah.
Right, yeah. Well,
that makes more sense.
Let's talk about training dogs. There are some ways with new technologies that you can have some better guides on training your dog for better behaviors. And Brian, again, I feel like a broken record. A lot of these are ones that I haven't personally used, so I can't vouch for the dog training itself. But I do know, I'll bring up one here as an example. Using the same kind of idea of collars that are or kind of programmable collars, but through a collar and an app that you can run on your phone, you can actually do some training of your own pet through this.
Yep.
So,
So, and Alan, I looked into this one, because although if you've met any of my dogs in the past, training was not necessarily something we spent a lot of time on. But I have been around people who are very diligent about training their dogs, and things like clickers, that they'll use manual clickers to be able to notify the dog and have a sound that registers to them as this is something I should not do, or this is something I should do. This I thought was really interesting because it, of course, it allowed, instead of a manual clicker, it allowed you to go with your phone, click on the screen that then makes something happen on their collars. So whether it's a vibration, which of course you couldn't get with the clicker, right? Clicker was all going to be basically sound only. So of course you were dealing with a dog that must have decent hearing, or the hearing must be the way in which they're registering that. But this could do a sound, which of course on a collar is going to be closer to the ears. So the sound can be registered a little clearer, or a vibration. So you've got multiple options of ways of delivering that training notification. So I think it's helpful. I think for someone who really is into training and wants to assure that they can use their techniques, and those techniques can be delivered a little bit more effectively. This could be helpful.
Yeah, it's still going to require you to be a good trainer of your pet.
Right.
I mean, that's the thing.
Right. This will not do it for you. Yes.
It's not going to do it all for you. It's still going to be, you got to be persistent and consistent.
Although there's got to be an app for that, right? There's got to be an app for that where you just put a collar on and say, listen,
train my dog.
Set it, if it barks, do something to it. And, and if it chews at my shoes, please, vibrate and scare it. And one of those days, some of those things are going to happen, but, so this I think is helpful. It's a way of delivery, right? It's a more maybe a more efficient and effective way of delivery of what you were going to do anyway. So.
It's just making use of your smartphone you already have, Bluetooth technology to communicate with the collar. So it just gives you those kind of a lot more capabilities than we would have had before. But now, speaking of capabilities, let's talk a little bit about something pets do have to do, whether it's inside or outside, and that's got to use the bathroom. They got to do their business. And that's one reason I think a lot of people, that whether they choose to have cats or not is kind of dependent on whether they want to deal with the indoor litter box or pets, dogs inside that you want to let out to go to the bathroom. That's always a challenge. It's a real challenge for pet ownership, is kind of managing that. So there are some ways technology is kind of helping with this process. We'd be remiss, Brian, if we did not talk about the ultra self-cleaning litter box for cats. Anyway, I'm fascinated by these. I'm really curious to see how well they work.
I'm going to let you talk about it. Go ahead.
I got nothing. I mean, these are insanely popular. They're out of stock, as you can see from the screen here already. So, but it's not really anything that's going to use an app or anything else, to my best of my knowledge, but it is using a form of technology to kind of help scoop over litter and to kind of help discard of things coming in the litter box. So a self-cleaning box.
So it is for someone who doesn't have cats and has never had a cat since I was a kid. So what you're saying is this removes what? What step does this remove from cat ownership, Alan?
So what it does is it kind of has a process in the inside where, because of the crystals that are being used for the litter, that causes things to clump around the waste material. So then there's almost like a sweeping motion going on with inside the actual box. It's taking all of those things that are more of the clumps of waste, and it is pushing them into a disposable bag or compartment that's very easy to dispose of, instead of having to go and rake through or sift through things or changing all the litter box, at one time. It does a lot of that work for you. So it is using technology to do that. Let's see if I can see. You load it, leave it, self-cleans for weeks, and then you lose the tray. So the stuff is in the bottom tray is a disposable bottom you get rid of. So that's all I can say.
So it's basically raking. It's basically raking out the clumps, or cleaning out the things that are there on a more regular basis. So is it? Do you know with this one, Alan? Have you looked at it? Is it a timer based, or is it a use based? Like the moment the cat leaves, does it recognize that it's time to do that? I imagine there's probably both out there, right?
Yeah, I don't know, Brian.
Yeah,
that's a good question. Very good. I'm still new back into this whole cat ownership. We don't have a litter box. The cat who has adopted us is a indoor outdoor cat. She basically goes to the door and yells whenever she's ready to go outside. And I'm not exaggerating. That's what I think
you need to be really careful with saying our cat, right? Because again, it's not really your cat, right?
No, it's not really my cat. Yeah. Not my cat at all. Mm-mm.
Yeah, and the ex-owner probably, hopefully, isn't listening right now. But yeah, you are taking care of someone else's cat.
Well, look,
right?
I kind of hope they are. Please come get her. Please. She has been living in our house for months now. If you know who this cat is, please, even if it's not yours, you just want to come get her.
You want a cat. Well, what about dogs? So what could be beneficial with dogs, Alan?
Yeah, so we got a good option for dogs.
I'm going to give you one. And I'm super pumped about this, and I don't have it, but I think to myself, this would be incredibly nice to have. So let's say, the dog, obviously there isn't a litter box, or at least I've never taught my dogs to use a litter box. So I'm relying on either a regular schedule of me reminding me or my wife to take them out, or having them go out through a doggy door or something. But the reminding me to take them out is often tough. I'm someone that when I get into my work, I kind of forget those sorts of things. Yeah, sure. So one of the things that I saw that it seems incredibly intriguing is a doorbell for your dog. Okay. And the idea is that you put a little button next to your door. That's right next to the eye level of the dog. The dog can actually get up there. And I think this one is they touch, although I'm sure there's some that if they get close, proximity based or something, that it rings a doorbell. It rings another doorbell that basically lets you know, wherever you are, I want to go out and you need to take me out. Now, I love this idea. Okay. However, my dog would be there all the time.
Well, I was
every 5 minutes, my dog would be there.
It even says in the description of this online, it says, though with some dogs, you might expect some abuse of power. And I think that's key, is that I could just see a dog saying, you know what? I got this figured out, man. I go up, I touch this thing. I get to go outside. It's awesome.
That's right. Dad just went to his office.
Some training involved with that.
Right back. Yeah. So, but it would be something. So, and I don't know if it's out there, but this would be kind of the next iteration of that, right? If you think about this as being a one-to-one, they touch, the bell comes on, right? That's a cool thing, but it's also a very limited thing, right? Well, what you would want, the next version of this, and maybe it's already out there, but the next version of this would be, okay, that button only works every hour, right? Or it can only work, if you haven't done this recently, right? So I think that there are going to be ways in which that can be silenced at a certain time. And again, I don't know how that training works, but I love this idea that the dog can let me know when they got to go, and making sure that they don't punish me in other ways by going inside. So there we go. Right? There's another way great. Of into business.
No, I think it's good, and I think it's obviously, like you mentioned, I think this is a good use situation if you are someone that may not be as able to be as attentive with your dog all the time. You're either tied up in stuff in your house, you're working a lot, you've got other things going on. but you have a dog you can train to use this responsibly, to really let you know when he needs to go out.
Yeah.
It would work.
Alan,
I think it's pretty neat.
let me give you a use case, right? What if that dog doorbell, what if I created a scenario where the dog doorbell is magneted to that, and when I leave the house, I take it off because I don't want the dog sitting there going, hey, I need to go out, got this doorbell going on all the time because I'm not home, and take them out. So I take it away. And when I come back home, I put it back on the magnet that says, hey, I'm going to be working for the next, 5 hours in my office, right? Yeah. You let me know, right, when it's time to go. So there could be ways in which you could creatively, make it work for your system. But if this is something where you feel like you get enthralled in your work and you don't always remember to take them out, and you're worried about that, there's a good way to do that. So
I think it's really, really smart. That's good.
Mylan, I think we got one more category, right?
And this is kind of wrap it up, because we've talked about a lot of things about, kind of how we manage our dogs or pets and animals and care for them and keep them safe and tend to their needs. But also, another need a lot of animals have, especially dogs, is the ability to play. And there is some technology out there to help us play with our animals, or at least let our animals have some more activity and more playtime as well. So, Brian, I think you put a couple of these on the list. I'm going to bring them up and show them. But
sure, yeah. So, and I think they're both the same concept, but one's for smaller dogs and one's for bigger dogs. But the automatic dog toy deliverer, right? This is what this is, and these have been around for a while. We've actually never used them, but I have a friend that has them and swears by it. Basically, it's a device where the dog can go and put the ball into the top of this ball feeder, and then it'll shoot it out and throw it for the dog, and then they go get it, they bring it back, drop it in the little container, and it throws. Because if you're someone who has had a golden retriever or a lab who has endless energy, and when they see a tennis ball, here's a way to wear them out, and it doesn't wear your arm out at the same time. What I would say is there's a couple of cool things here, Alan. One, as they've started to improve these, one of them, and one of the things I always thought about is like, how many times has a dog gotten hit with one of these where they stand in front of it, it gets shoot out, right? But there's a little proximity sensors that says, if the dog's right in front, it's not going to shoot it, right?
That's nice.
If a person or a kid, maybe you've got a kid and you've got your dog out playing with their, automated dog device, but a kid walks in front of it. So that's not going to, they've got, ways in which that could happen. I'm also noticing like what is the rest timer that it says there?
Yeah.
So it could be ways in which, the dog that can continue to do this forever, maybe there's a limit at which it will do it, and then it'll turn off and say, sorry, you got to rest now, right? Don't wear yourself out.
And there are some dogs that, they will keep going until until something breaks, and it could be actually a little bad for them. They need to take some rest time. So
So I think these are great. And the reason I brought up the second one, Alan, is that this one would shoot a ball a certain distance, and you think, okay, well, that's probably not an indoor thing. For a lot of people, this is an outdoor thing only. But then there's the mini ball launcher, right? And this is for maybe indoor, could be a little bit more effective for small dogs. They could have a smaller ball, that they can't grab a full tennis ball. So I think this is kind of a cool way to be able to do that. So I don't know from knowing friends that have had these, they will pull them out and only use them for a certain amount of time and then put them away. I don't know if this is something that if you just left out, the dog would play when they want to play, while you're at work, if they would just wear themselves out. But I think it's ways to use technology to try to hopefully improve your peace of mind, but also enhance the life of the pet, right? Enhance the ability of the pet to live effectively.
Yeah.
So.
Well, we joke a little bit. I was joking about the whole playing kind of being maybe least important, but as you recall early on, we were talking about the health tracker on there, and it was monitoring how much activity your animal was getting. Sometimes, sometimes those animals the pets have more energy than we do as humans
Right.
So having some technology devices that allow it to kind of get some activity and get it some running and moving, and that's
Yep.
great. So
Yep.
I'm all for it.
Yeah.
Again, we lost our dog just in the last 7 or 8 months, and these were all things I had kind of looked at as saying, all right, what are some things now that we're in a different house and we got a different setup? What are some of the things we need? A lot of these things we talked about were on the list, at least being considered, of different ways that help manage our pet. If we certainly would have moved forward with some of them if we still had her. Yeah. So it's great. I think I'm so excited about the technology that exists for pets now. A little more peace of mind knowing where they are, a little more peace of mind knowing that they can still get fed and watered even if we're not there on the right schedule. And then having the ability to let them play a little bit and not wear me out at the end of the day when I come home as much. So, that was a little selfish. Yeah. It's a little selfish for me, but it's okay.
I mean, if you age to the point, where you can't go in and give them the exercise they need, that the dog shouldn't suffer. Right. So if there are ways in which that can happen more effectively, I think it's great. So obviously the main goal here is don't let the technology force you to become an absent-minded or an absentee, owner of your pet. But certainly if this makes ownership more efficient and allows the pet's life to be more effective within your scenario, your situation, then I think it's great. So as with all technology, think through the use case, think through the possible downsides, and try to make the best decision for you and your pet.
So a couple of things, Brian, that I don't know if viewers were kind of picking up on when we were flashing a lot of these products up on the screen. A lot of them are pretty pricey. They get kind of expensive. I hate saying the adage, you get what you pay for, but I really think before you go out and spend a lot of money on a really, one of these great products, really do your research, find a really good reputable brand, find one with really great reviews, because putting down $100, $150, $200 on some of these products we were talking about, it's not something to take lightly. I mean, I would make sure you get really good products, good quality ones that are going to last and have some good feedback from users. So I'd say definitely be a lot of stuff we like to talk about tech is sometimes a little bit less expensive tech stuff that we've got, apps or gadgets or whatnot. These things can get pricey to get really good ones. So I'll definitely say make sure you do your homework and research on that. And then there's also a couple websites that we've also referenced a little bit that I think is important for people to keep in mind too. One of the ones I'm going to show the screen here is PetSafe. A lot of the products we were showing and talking about were PetSafe products. So that's petsafe.net, not .com, it's .net. So PETSAFE.net. And this has a lot of the things like the automatic feeders, the kitty litter scooping, a lot of the, some fences, some training collars, all the things, and using technology for a lot of the products we talked about before. Then the other one I think we'll mention also is Chewy.com.
Yeah.
It's another website that's really good for just some other pet products. I mean, a lot of things pet related, food and whatnot as well, but they're also really have some great technology products there on their website as well. Ones that are sold by these two sites, I would have a pretty good confidence in.
Yeah, I'm pretty confident in. Yep.
Be a little careful about just finding one on Amazon and buying it. It could be a little more hit or miss. Definitely check the reviews on those, but these are some good reputable sites that we would recommend and feel like would be a good option for you. So,
and Alan, can I give one more just piece of advice? You are spot on. That you need to do your research. I think within doing your research, try to sit back and think, what are all the things that I potentially could end up purchasing and using? And the reason I say that is that you remember a lot of these things that we've mentioned all come with something to put on the collar, and if all of a sudden a year down the road you have 5 things on this dog's collar, right? You're kind of counting the play and the activity of what could happen here, right? But if you would have maybe thought ahead and said, oh, you know what? I don't just need them to have an invisible fence, but I also want them to be able to get out the pet door and all these things. Maybe there's a product that actually does all of those, right? Or can do all of those things with one sensor. So, do think ahead. And, if you're thinking of going into the technology world with pets, think about going in and handling lots of your concerns with one device as opposed to, 10 different devices that each have their own unique contribution. So
very, very good point.
Yeah.
And again, the whole kind of summing up why we feel like why we're so excited about technology when it comes to pets, it really, like you said, Brian, it's the notifications.
Yep.
Knowing that I can be notified about what's going on with my pet, even when I'm not at the house, away from the house. And I can control the things that might help my pet be better managed when I'm not there.
Yep.
Feeding schedule, monitoring them, tracking them, things that I don't have to physically be at the house. Because I know there's many families out there that are always, sometimes they're they're more reluctant to leave the house if they've got a dog that they're really caring for more because of that, because they just have no idea if the dog's going to have a need or could get out or needs to be fed. There are some ways to kind of make the experience we have with our pets, I think, a little more meaningful for our lives and make it a more positive experience by incorporating some of this new technology in there. So
that's great. Yep. I agree.
All right.
I agree.
Well, Brian, as always, if anybody has questions, feedback, they've got their own pet experience using technology, they want to share with us some things to keep in mind, how can they go about getting a hold of us?
Well, they've got a couple options, but mainly you can send us an email at info@themesh.tv. That's one way. Send us a note as to future topics that you'd like to see us get into, or ways in which you use pet technology. You could also go to our website. Our website is brothers-in- sorry, it's covered by my webcam right now. in-tech.com. So brothers-in-tech.com. And you'll notice that we're continuing to enhance the website. Eventually, we're going to have some other reviews that we'll be doing that are outside of what we have on the podcast. But that's a way to access the podcast. It's a way to access our contact, to be able to send us an email through there. So, start using our website as your go-to source for Brothers in Tech information. And there's our contact sheet, so you can send us a message that way if you would like. And that way you're not having to send us an actual email. You can use our system. So, great. Any of those will work. So info@themesh.tv or brothers-in-tech.com.
All right. Well, that has been our episode on pet tech, and we hope you enjoyed it. We will be back next time. Don't want to tease it too much, but I think our next episode may be a Brothers in Tech suggestions episode.
Ooh,
possibly.
I think it's quite likely, Alan. We're due. We're due.
I think it's time.
We're due.
So stay tuned for that next week. That should be our episode, is Brothers in Tech recommendations and suggestions for you. But until then, I'm Alan Jackson. That is Brian Jackson over that way.
Yep.
And we are the Brothers in Tech saying goodbye, and we'll see you next time. Take care.
All right. Bye-bye.
You've been listening to The Mesh, an online media network of shows and programs ranging from business to arts, sports to entertainment, music to community. All programs are available on the website as well as through iTunes and YouTube. Check us out online at themesh.tv. Discover other network shows and give us feedback on what you just heard.